I see you at the top. That's where I go.
Welcome to episode 2 of the See You at the Top podcast. I'm Jordan Leake in replace of the one and only Kirby Chenkin, but today I'm here with Kirby Chenkin, founder of KirBeBetter. Kirby, how you doing today?
Doing great, my man. First, hey, recently joined the team. It's been about a month, man. I'm grateful for you joining the team. Lots of synchronicities between the two of us. Let's keep going.
See you at the top.
See you at the top.
So on episode 1, Kirby, you were telling your story about, basically what made Kirby better, but also what is making Kirby Chenkin, today, tomorrow, and the next day. But we'll pick up where we left off. So you just had a conversation with a good childhood friend of yours, and he had said, Kirby, you're a screw up, right? And that was a conversation that definitely seemed like it left a big imprint on you. So, after that moment, what happened after that?
Definitely. So, he told me I was an F up, and it hit me like a rock because he was a close friend of mine. He didn't mean anything bad by it. And I ended up getting kicked out of John Newcomb's Academy, and I moved back in with my mom in Houston, Texas. And I started living with her, doing the same old freaking thing. Smoking cigarettes, smoking weed, drinking alcohol, hanging out with the same crowd, just not really evolving, not really doing much, just very comfortable where I was in my life. And eventually, probably after 3, 4, 5 months of that, my mom just had a talk with me, sat me down, and she said, Kirby, enough is enough. I'm not going to let you live in this house and do nothing. You have 2 options. And those 2 options were, you either go back to school or you get a job. And I said, well, man, school has not been something I really enjoy. I've been kicked out about four schools now. I'm not very good at it. I think I'll get a job. So I ended up applying at HEB, my local HEB. And there was 2 major things I learned by applying at HEB. Number 1, they had us do a assessment. There was 20 of us, and they had us do a quick assessment, and they put us in groups of 4, and they made us do a promotional pitch. And I absolutely crushed it. And I feel like that was one of the first moments in my life where I really just stepped up to the challenge and succeeded, other than playing basketball and stuff in my early days. And I feel like that's because when you're doing what the God-given gift is that's inside of you, you really excel in that. And I did really well in that. And they called me back the next day and they said, Kirby, out of the 20 people, you and one other person ended up getting the job. And I was like, wow, awesome. I got the job. And I ended up showing up that next day. And during training, they had me do something that I didn't really want to do. And I said, I don't think this is for me. And I ended up walking out after one day of working for HEB. And the second thing that I learned was that I didn't want to work for anybody else, that it just wasn't for me. And my dad had talked to me and knew my personality. And it just really wasn't something that he saw me being able to do. And it was never something that really ever felt right inside of me. I felt like I always wanted to do my own thing. So those are the 2 lessons I learned from there. And I said, well, I guess I'll go back to school. And I ended up applying at Houston Community College. So I started going to HCC. Rate My Professor definitely saved me. Made pretty good grades at HCC, but there was 2 things that I continuously wanted to do. And my intuition, I'm a strong believer in listening to your intuition. And that inner voice was talking to me my entire childhood. And there was 2 main things that it wanted me to do. Number 1, take acting classes, which I'm actually doing now. We'll get into that in a later episode. And the second thing is, I wanted to always learn how to box. My dad was in the boxing business. His business partner was in the boxing business. They created a concept called ballroom boxing, which if you look at the video games, when they have the ballrooms in the video games, my dad and his partner are the ones that really put those first ballroom shows on. So I was surrounded by the boxing business my entire childhood. I got to see Evander Holyfield train for the Mike Tyson fight. And I finally just said, you know what, I'm going to listen to this intuition. Dad, I want to take boxing classes. I was going to HCC, and my dad goes, Kirby, that's awesome. I recommend you go to Savannah's boxing gym. Willie Savannah was the owner of it. May Willie Savannah rest in peace. He's no longer with us. He recently passed away a few weeks ago. He was a great man, and he actually inspired lots of kids' lives to really get out of the streets and do some amazing things and taught them discipline. So rest in peace, Willie Savannah. But I started going to Savannah's boxing gym. And I remember the first day I walked in, my dad told me to go pick up Robert, who was one of my dad's closest friends and who was in the boxing business with him. I picked up Robert. I walk into the boxing gym, and right off the bat, I thought Robert was going to show me every little step of how to do it. I thought he was going to show me the technique of how to throw a jab, and he just kind of just threw me in the fire, and he said, okay, hit the bag. wrapped my hands up. He showed me how to do that, and he goes, hit the bag. And I'm like, T, I don't know what I'm doing. How am I going to hit the bag? And he goes, just show me what you got. So I started hitting the bag, and after 60 seconds of hitting the bag, I was absolutely exhausted. I was dying. And this was a big point in my life, because this is when I really realized that I wasn't in shape. So even though, because I was lifting weights 2 or 3 times a week, and externally I looked like I was in shape, internally I was still smoking cigarettes. And I realized in this moment that cigarettes were actually killing me.
Right. There's a big difference between external versus internal.
Definitely. Big difference between looking in shape and actually being healthy and in shape. And after maybe 2 or 3 rounds of hitting the bag, he goes, boy, you are out of shape. And I said, what are you talking about, T? And he goes, you're out of shape. And he goes, are you smoking? And I said, yeah. And he goes, that's probably why. He goes, you need to start running. He goes, the champ, the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali, used to run 10 miles a day when he was training. So I started running after that. But I remember leaving the boxing gym that day and just really getting deep in my thoughts and thinking, wow, I really am out of shape. These cigarettes really are killing me. And in that moment, I made the decision to quit cigarettes. And within a few months of boxing, I had completely quit smoking cigarettes. I definitely had a weaning off process, but I completely stopped smoking cigarettes and started getting more and more into becoming healthier. And I started boxing exceptionally well. I started to grow really fast. And another thing that happened to me in the gym that day was the first week that I was there, I ran into a guy by the name of Hollywood, who I'm pretty sure is going to be watching this podcast because he's still a friend of mine, and I know he's tuning into the channel. Hope he's doing great. And I remember looking at Hollywood hitting the bag. And when my dad brought me that first day, because my dad was in the boxing business, lots of people knew my dad in the gym. Willie Savannah came up to us and said, yeah, I'll definitely show Kirby the ropes. And my dad knew one of the trainers in there. Ira Chenkin, how are you doing? And of course, when I walked in with Robert, who was actually a part of Muhammad Ali's entourage, he was the guy who trained me for the first few months I learned boxing. He was like a superstar in there. Everybody knew him because he was one of Muhammad Ali's closest friends. But I remember seeing Hollywood in there with another trainer, and I said, if I could, this was the first week of boxing, I said, if I could just get 50% as good as Hollywood, I would have so much self-confidence in myself. And I was picked on early on as a kid, so that's probably really what ignited me wanting to box. And I said, if I could just get 50% as good as Hollywood, man, I'd be so proud of myself. And within 1 year, me and Hollywood started training consistently together, and I was sparring with them. And Hollywood, just in case you do watch this, I'm not saying that I beat you, but you did come up with a nickname for me, Tommy Machine Gun, and you said I'm one of the hardest hitting dudes that you've ever trained. So I definitely got on Hollywood's level, and I feel like because sports and just fitness is definitely something that I love to do, and I was able to excel in it. So I got very good within 1 year of boxing. But boxing was really what I feel helped me develop what I call the KirBeBetter mindset, the growth mindset, because before I walked into that boxing gym, I was kind of just floating by. I wasn't evolving like I am now. And I started to improve. And in boxing, I went in there because I really wanted to be able to, if somebody picked on me, because I was always one of the shortest kids in the class. I was either the shortest or the second shortest in the class. So I definitely, as you heard in the first episode, I was definitely bullied quite a bit. And it definitely hurts to get bullied. And if anybody's getting bullied out there, I want you to know that it's okay. Everything is going to work out for you, and just keep moving forward and just use that as a drive, and don't let it beat you up too much. But really what I learned from boxing is I learned self-discipline. I learned how to build the consistency, the self-discipline, the self-respect. And I wanted to really learn how to be able to defend myself and potentially knock a kid out one day that was bullying me. And what I learned is that that's absolutely not what I wanted to do whatsoever, that I had so much more self-discipline and self-respect. The last thing I wanted to do was fight somebody after I learned the discipline of martial arts.
And to bring you back just a little bit, you talked about when you went back home that you were kind of hanging out in the same crowd again, right? So, with that, did any of those kids start doing anything? Did any of them go to college, play sports? I mean, what were those kids doing?
Right. So they were kind of just doing the same thing. And at the time, they were kind of just going through the same motions, very comfortable, not really trying to improve. And boxing really made me want to improve myself. And I was going to HCC, and I was started to train boxing, and I started to get really good at it. And I remember at the gym that I used to go to called Sweetwater Country Club, I started seeing a lot of my friends that I went to high school with. And they started going off to college to become doctors, to become lawyers, to become all these different things. And it just didn't sit right with me that all I was doing was just going to a local community college, barely getting by in boxing, and definitely improving with boxing. And I started getting healthy, but it just didn't sit right with me. So I said, I need to make a change. And I remember looking at one of my friend's posts, and when I was at John Newcomb's tennis academy, he was somebody that I thought I was really on his level. I was actually able to compete with him. He beat me, I beat him, and he was playing for a very reputable Division II college in Northern California. And I just remember saying, man, if this kid can play college tennis, I always had this dream of becoming a college athlete. Let me go fulfill my dream of becoming a college athlete. Tennis is my best bet. Basketball, as you know, at 5'8", I'd already missed that shot, missed that boat. So I started training to play tennis again and started thinking about how can I start to play college tennis again. I started picking up my tennis stroke again, started getting very good, because at Nukes, I definitely won a pretty big tournament. I became one of the top, 200 to 300 tennis players in the state of Texas. And I remember I was telling my dad I wanted to play college tennis because all my friends are going off to college. I can't just sit here and go to HCC all day. I got to do something with myself. I had this mindset now of I wanted to do something. So my dad had a meeting, another one of my friends that I saw that was at John Newcomb's Tennis Academy. Shout out to all my rock solid people out there. Fossil Phil is an awesome guy. And he was playing for a university called Tyler Junior College. And it's in Tyler, Texas. They're one of the top-rated junior college. At the time, they were the top-rated junior college in the state, in the nation, as a matter of fact. And he was playing for there, and I had reached out to him and said, hey, man, what are the chances I could play for TJC? And I think, I don't think you can start on the lineup on the top 6 or anything because they're all top European athletes, but I really do think you can make the team. And it got me thinking. I started training super hard. And my dad ended up having a business meeting in Tyler, Texas, like a few weeks later after I told him that. And he goes, Kirby, I'm going to try to get you a meeting with the head coach. Long story short, my dad is one of the most street smart things. When he wants to get something done, he knows how to get it done. He's a awesome Brooklyn, New Yorker that knows how to really manipulates, maybe has a bit of a negative connotation, but he knows how to get what he wants. So he ended up getting a meeting with the head coach for Tyler Junior College, and he said, I'll give your son a tryout, no problem. So about a week later, I remember going to Tyler Junior College. The next week, my dad took me up there, and we had a tryout. And he goes, wow, your son, I hit with one of the players, and he goes, wow, your son is a great athlete. We'll definitely let him come on and try out for the team when the semester starts. I think he can definitely get on that, on that bottom lineup of the team.
And did you have a lot of training beforehand, before the tryout, or were you just, was it just kind of your natural gift and ability just to have tennis like that?
Right, definitely. So what I remember is that I just was a natural athlete. My dad always says you compare 10 people with me and play 10 sports that I can beat LeBron James or anybody in 10 sports. And I think he's boosted me up a little bit. I think he's giving me a little too much confidence. But when it comes to paddle sports, when it comes to ping pong, I know I whooped a lot of people in ping pong at Nukes. When it comes to paddle sports and overall calisthenics and stuff, I think I am a great athlete. And I remember that after that coach told me that he was going to give me a shot to make that team, I kind of, and pretty much said that I was going to be able to make the bottom lineup of that team. Me and my dad then went on a quick vacation to the West Coast, and he told me, be back in a month or a month and a half, whatever it was. And I just remember on that start of that vacation, it was a road trip we took. I put on my Beats by Dre headphones. They were just really making noise. They were the coolest headphones, and I put on one of my favorite Eminem songs. He was the one who really got me in the zone as a kid. And I just remember getting in that moment and saying, oh my gosh, Kirby, I finally freaking made it. And it's like, it's one of those moments, I know in everybody's life, you can go back to 3, 4, 5 big time moments in your life that you can just remember very vividly, very clearly. And that was one of those moments when I was just like, I made it. I'm no longer going to be a screw up. I'm doing something with myself finally. And it felt so great. I was crying, tears of inspiration. Of course, my dad was driving. It wasn't like I was bawling, crying or anything, but I was definitely just, complete tears of inspiration. And I felt like I made it. And then we ended up going on a West Coast trip. And then after that, we decided last minute to go on a European cruise for a couple weeks. And to make a long story short, I ended up partying like a rock star on that cruise. Don't need to get into any of those details. We'll save that for another podcast. But I ended up coming back, and I had to come back with very little training, and I had to jump right back into trying out for the team. And I ended up having to play. I ended up getting to the point to where it was me, whoever won this last match, me or this other kid was going to make that last spot. And no excuses. The kid beat me fair and square, and I didn't make the team, and it crushed me. It definitely crushed me. And I remember getting in my truck at the time, driving back to the dorms, just feeling like the freaking world just stomped on me, just feeling like I was just crushed. But I talked myself into saying, you know what, we're not going to let this break you and just quit and just give up. I'm going to do everything I can to make that team, because the coach said, we're going to put you on the redshirt team for a semester. And if you end up succeeding on the redshirt team, then we're going to put you back on the team.
And it seems like those moments too are just as big as the triumphs, those low points, because it's, how you respond to that adversity.
Hey, amen to that. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And there's blessings in everything that's happening to us in our life. And life is not all about rainbows and sunshine. If it was, life would be easy. And what would be the fun in it if you just kept flying to the top? It sounds nice, but philosophically, that's not what life is about. It's about those challenges, like you just said, Jordan, are truly what make you. And I rose to this challenge and said, I'm not going to let this break me. It definitely crushed me. It hurt me, but I stepped up to the challenge, and I started training extremely hard on that redshirt team. And I did get to be, in my opinion, the best person on that redshirt team. And my tennis career at Nukes, and where we're going to go later on in this podcast, it never quite really succeeded. I constantly kept, in my eyes, failing in my tennis career. I kept going through tons of injuries. I kept just losing big matches, having breakdowns on the court. And I feel like because it wasn't fully aligned with me, and we can get to that in a later episode, but my dad really projected very hard on me that he wanted me to be this top athlete, that the number one thing that he put every ball in my crib, like we talked about in that first episode. But at the end of the day, that really wasn't what was for me. And I feel like when you're not listening to your intuition, you're not going to succeed. But when you're listening to your intuition and you're doing what you love, that's where you're really going to start to grow. And tennis was just a stepping stone for me to get to where I wanted to go. But one thing that one of the moments that was the most powerful for me at Tyler Junior College was, I remember having a biology class. And I remember saying, I'm going to study really hard for this. And I was also very into biology because it was all about anatomy. It was all about the organs, how the body works, the alkalinity, the acidicness of the body. So, as you know now, and people out there know, health is very important to me. I actually put in a lot of work for this test. And I ended up studying hard, took the test, and I ended up getting either an 89 or a 90. I don't remember the exact score, but it was a very high score. It was one of the best scores. I think it was the best score I ever got on a test in my entire life. And I just remember getting that result back from the teacher, and just it kind of shocked me. And I said, oh my gosh, maybe I can actually do this and make good grades if I just put my mind to something. And I had so much confidence walking back to my dorm down the street at Tyler Junior College. And it was just one of those groundbreaking moments as well that I won't forget. And I was like, wow, maybe I'm not so stupid. Maybe I can actually do whatever I set my mind to. And then I ended up not making the redshirt team that second semester. But I remember one of the assistant coaches, who's now the head coach at the University of Texas at Dallas, he was kind of asking what's next for me because he knew I wanted playing time, and I wasn't getting playing time at Tyler Junior College. So he said, we started talking about the University of Texas at Dallas. And he said, I think you could be on the starting lineup at UTD, Kirby. And I said, Dash, you really think I could play for UTD and be on the starting lineup? And he said, absolutely, Kirby. I think your skill level is good enough to be on that starting lineup. So the head coach for UTD came out to Tyler Junior College. Much respect to him. He drove a couple hours out, gave me a tryout, and he said, yeah, Kirby, I think you can definitely make the top 6 on this team here, and we'd love to have you on the team. And it was awesome. I actually ended up making the team. But before that, I had to get into the University of Texas at Dallas first because it wasn't a scholarship type school. It was a Division III university. But it actually is one of the top 3 universities in the state of Texas and one of the most hardest to get into, and it's evolving like crazy. Swoosh to all my UTD fans out there. I remember waiting for 2 or 3 weeks. My mom helped me apply to the university, and I was just like, I didn't think I was going to get in, to be honest. It's a good university. I mean, my grades at TJC were probably around a 2.5, 3.0 or something, making better grades than I ever had. And I remember checking the mail one day. We were checking the mail every day, me and my mom, and I got into UTD. So that was next on my journey. Ended up going to UT Dallas, and once again, my tennis career never met the expectations that I had for myself. I kept battling injuries, but I feel the reason was because it wasn't really aligned with what I was supposed to do in this world, but it got me into doing what I really love to do.
Right. And so, on that point, I was going to ask you from, community college and junior college, people usually go to, the next university, but a big part of that is because they have to declare a major. So,
right.
When you got there, did you just keep taking Rate My Professor easy classes, or were you starting to kind of transition to more, right?
No, I definitely jumped right back on the Rate My Professor bandwagon. And it definitely was just taking the basic necessity classes that, the basic requirements that they had you take. And then eventually, after 1 year of that, my counselor called me in and we were getting ready for one of the breaks. And she said right before the break, Kirby, I can't let you come back to UT Dallas, because she kept asking me for weeks, months, what are you going to declare? I said, I have no idea. How many more basic classes can I take? And finally she said, enough is enough, Kirby. It's time to declare your major. What do you want to declare? And I said, I have no idea. And she goes, well, what are you into right now? And I said, well, I'm reading Warren Buffett's book right now, and I'm actually investing some of my own money. Not a lot, but I'm investing my own money in the stock market. Can I study the stock market? And she goes, well, Kirby, you actually can't study the stock market. That's a higher level degree. You got to get a Series C or whatever it's called. Unfortunately, you can't study that. That'll have to be later down the road. And I said, well, bummer. And she goes, well, Kirby, what else do you love to do? And I go, well, I love shoes. I've been collecting shoes. My dad actually gave me a few $1,000s, and I've been able to turn this collection into a $30,000 collection within the course of, a year and a half or so. And she goes, wow, that's pretty impressive. So do you love collecting things? Do you love business? And I said, yeah, well, I guess I do enjoy business. I'm definitely, I watch Shark Tank. My mom, my dad, lots of my dad's friends told me my entire life he'd make a great businessman. And at the time, I was actually working with a friend of mine by the name of Cow Sheik. Shout out Cow Sheik. I hope he's doing great. I know he's going to be tuning into this episode. And at the time, Nike had this way to where, I don't know how they do it now. You're probably more familiar with it. But how they do it is at 12 o'clock, they would release these exclusive shoes that would sell for hundreds and hundreds of dollars, some of them even several $1,000s. And you would have to be on the website right at 12 o'clock, and you'd have to put in your credit card, your email, and whoever got it first, got it first. And I just said, this is not a fair system because things are glitching, the Nike site would go down. So me and Cow Sheik started to develop a Nike bot, something that would automate the checkout process to where it just automatically happened very quickly for us. And that was one of the first really great ideas that I have. And as people that are in the shoe business know now, bots are a huge thing when it comes to checking out. Nike's had to change their system bunches of times. And I was, in my opinion, one of the first ones, if not the first one, to start developing it. And of course, we weren't the first ones. We were the first ones to create it. But the hardest thing when you're starting a business is the execution of the idea. And we didn't execute that one. And, somebody else ended up probably making a ton of money off that concept. But she goes, Kirby, I think business is something that you really love. That's what the counselor said to me. And I said, and she goes, I think you can get into the business school, Kirby. And I said, you think I can get into the business school, the Navon Jindal School of Business? Because I walk by it all the time, and mostly business schools are harder to get into. And she goes, Kirby, you have, right around a 3.0 GPA average. Thank you, Rate My Professor. And she goes, I think you can get in. And I said, wow, I'd love to get into the business school. And I just remember when I got into the business school, that's when I really started to excel in school. I started to really grow. I ended up starting one of the first Jewish organizations on campus, Chabad on campus. I ended up getting into the investment club. I ended up founding something called the Entrepreneurship Club, and I studied entrepreneurship. And I remember at the Entrepreneurship Club, I learned from a guy by the name of Eric Fortenberry. And he really taught me a lot of great business skills because he was actually studying computer software, but only to learn. He had founded a company called OrgSync, which he ended up exiting that company very successfully. And I just remember learning some very valuable skills from him. One of those skills was, and I hope Eric Fortenberry's doing great out there, when he said he was going to do something, he did it. And that's something that I really took from him. When he said he was going to send an email tonight, when he said he was going to get this task done, he did it. And one of the things that I pride myself on today is when I say I'm going to do something in this business world, you best believe I'm going to get it done. And I learned a whole lot from them, and I really started to excel in business. And that's when I really started to enjoy school and focus in and really enjoy what they were teaching me for the first time.
Right. And, again, to kind of pull back a little bit, it seems almost like, a lot of people kind of believe in you, or there's a small group of people in your corner, but it seems like you were the one that was, pushing back. Like, you think I can play tennis here? You think I can get in the school here? You think I can get in the school of business here? So, I mean, do you think that was just, embedded in you from all the failure, or do you think it was just something that you were insecure about at the time?
Yeah, looking back on it, that's a great point. I think it was just because I screwed up so many times. I had just had so much failure. Everything that I tried to do, I told myself I was going to do this, that, and I just kept failing. I told myself I was going to, pass classes at John Newcomb's Tennis Academy. I'm kicked out, and I just kept failing so much. And I think that was a big reason why I didn't have the confidence in myself. And when I really started to study business was when I started to actually develop confidence in myself. And once again, my tennis career didn't quite work out. It's a great tennis program, UT Dallas, and I'm very grateful for them. But I feel like just because something doesn't work out, if you just keep listening to that voice inside of you and keep aligning with who you are, eventually you're going to keep moving in that right direction all the way to the top. And I found business. So I'm super grateful for my tennis career because it let me find what I truly love to do, which is business. And I succeeded in business school, and I ended up graduating with right at about a 3.0 GPA, which was absolutely like more than I could possibly believe. And my mom was so proud of me. My dad was incredibly proud of me. And it meant so much to me to be able to graduate because I was kicked out of all these schools. These doctors told me I couldn't do it. So it meant a whole lot to me to actually be able to, to achieve something. And I remember when I look back at my achievements, I have this gratitude list and I have an achievement list, and I read it all the time. And when I read my achievement list, the only one that I don't feel like I've achieved anything in my life yet. I know that I'm growing and I'm evolving, but when it comes to my achievements, I don't feel like I've even done close to what I'm going to do. But when I take myself back and I visualize my achievements, the main thing that I take myself back to is graduating at UT Dallas. And my family was there. There was a graduation ceremony. And I definitely was learning from a lot of these successful entrepreneurs like Mark Cuban, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates. And I just remember saying, everybody's just going to do the same old thing here. They're just going to go shake the guy's hand at graduation. They call your name, they're going to shake it. And I said, I got to do something different. So I really started seeing the value in the benefit of actually not blending in with the crowd. Be different. Be you. Be unique, man. And I said, I'm going to do something crazy. And looking back on it, it's pretty coincidental that I decided to do this. But I was super inspired by professional athletes. When they would hit a home run, after the game was over, they would point just like this to the heavens. And I remember they called my name. And now graduating, Kirby Chenkin. And I walked across that stage and I stopped right in the middle. And I pointed up to the heavens and I said, thank you, God. And it meant so much to me to be able to graduate. And my family was so proud of me. We went to dinner. It was a great time. They ended up going back. And I just remember I had a bottle of champagne in my condo. And I took that bottle of champagne. I was by myself. I was cleaning out my apartment. And I just took that bottle of champagne. I shook it up and I popped that cork. And I just went freaking crazy. I was pounding on my chest. Let's go, Kirby. I was going insane. In a controlled way, of course, but I was just super amped up like I had just won the NBA Finals or the World Championship, whatever it was, and it's because in my mind I won the World Championships, and all those people that told me I couldn't, that was my revenge right there, saying, you know what, I can, and I will.
All right, so cool. So you just graduated. Congratulations for that. Congrats to all other grads too. Okay, I'm right there with you. COVID graduation is crazy, but after you graduated, did you start pursuing some of these other business ideas that you had? Did you move back in with your mom? What type of work were you doing now?
So a couple of months before I graduated, I started to get that anxiety that a lot of college graduates have, like, what am I going to do next? And I had no idea, to be honest, but my dad was a lawyer. My dad's friends were lawyers. It runs in my blood. So all my dad's friends just constantly said, Kirby, you got to go to law school. Get your law degree. And I still hear it from all of you today, and I'm not in law school. And I feel like I started to listen to what society was telling me to do. They were all telling me to do it. Well, you know what? Maybe it is my best move. Let me start studying to go to law school. So I started studying to go to law school, and I just kept procrastinating studying for the LSATs, and I never got flow. And one of my other friends, David Watson, shout out to him. Me and him were real close at UTD. He was really studying super hard, but I was procrastinating. And I feel like what you procrastinate is something that you don't really want to do, because what you want to do, you're going to do. So I ended up calling my dad about a month before I graduated, And I said, Dad, I'm going to go to law school. Yeah, I know you're telling me it's what's best. All your friends, all your lawyer friends are telling me to go to law school too. I'm going to go, don't worry. But I'm learning so much in business school with my entrepreneurship career. I feel like I'm becoming an expert in business, and I'm learning all these different tactics to get business. And he had just got a great opportunity, and he was transitioning his law firm into a personal injury law firm. What it predominantly is a personal injury law firm now. And I said, Dad, let me test out everything I'm learning and come down and work for you for 6 months a year, and let me just see how this goes and really make sure I want to go to law school, because it just didn't feel right to me to go to law school. And he goes, Kirby, that's an awesome idea, because you know I'm not a businessman. My dad's an exceptional lawyer. He's a great lawyer. He's helped so many people out here in the city of Houston, more than I can possibly think of. And he goes, I think it'd be a great idea, because I'm not the best at managing money, creating systems, all these things. So I think it'd be a great idea. So I graduated, and I moved into right where we're at right now. I moved into this condo, and I started running my dad's business. And it definitely, from a growth standpoint, I was really started to grow the law firm substantially. But in terms of fulfillment, in terms of enjoyment, me and my dad were fighting like cats and dogs. And those of you out there that know my dad, Ira Chenkin, you know he is one of the toughest people on this planet to get along with. And he's a Brooklyn, New Yorker that is very, very aggressive. But at the end of the day, it's all love. And he knows that as well. We were fighting like cats and dogs, and couple times I remember freaking bouncing a computer mouse off the wall, and it just got heated. I wasn't inspired by it, but because business is something that I love, I was not going to give up on it. And my dad knows that I don't have quit in my bone. When I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to keep doing it until the end. And we were just fighting like cats and dogs, and I couldn't figure out why it was so challenging for us to work together. And I remember I was at a sushi restaurant with my dad, and because I had developed in the boxing gym and through business and through definitely doing things that I love, I developed a growth mindset. I asked my dad a growth-minded question. And a lot of people don't want to ask growth-minded questions that will help them improve, because they don't want the truth. They're too stuck in their ways. And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, what is my biggest weakness? And he said, well, you sure you want the truth, Kirby? I said, Dad, the truth shall set you free. I don't think I really said that, but I said something like, give me the truth, Dad. Give it to me raw. He said, well, you're not that hard of a worker, Kirby. When it comes to working for the law firm, you're only putting in a few hours a day, and some days you don't even come in. And it definitely hit me pretty hard, and I started thinking, and I was just like, man, he's got a good point. I said, I appreciate the feedback, Dad. I got to figure this out. But I said, Dad, you know what? But I'm working out at the Houstonian. I'm working out at the gym 4 or 5 hours a day. I'm not even exaggerating. At the time, I was working out 4, 5, 6 hours every single day, and I would put in 2 or 3 for his law firm. But I didn't understand why I wasn't working hard. So I was really searching now. My soul was really searching for an answer. I couldn't figure out why I'm working out so hard in the gym, but his law firm, I'm not working out hard. And my dad said, the only thing different that I see with you is you have the whole package, Kirby. You got everything you need to do whatever you want to do in this world, but you're just not working super hard. And that's what society tries to tell you. And that's all that my dad knew at the time. Society tries to tell you that your 9-to-5 job, that in your work that you have, that's where you really have to work hard. But the key is to really find what you love to do, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But my soul was really searching. Why am I not working hard? I couldn't figure it out, and I was thinking about it for days. I remember living with my mom when I was remodeling this condo. My mom was gracious enough to let me live at home with her. I'm sure I drove her crazy, but she loves me more than anything. And I just remember one day I was up late at night, and I couldn't sleep. I was restless, and I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I was still searching for the same answer. And I said, and I had just watched the Tom Cruise movie. And I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, man, Tom Cruise is a cool dude, man. I think is he better than I am? I think he is, man. He's making millions of dollars. He's traveling the world. He's so cool. He's starring in A-list movies. Why is Tom Cruise better than me? What is he doing differently? And in that moment, I had this massive epiphany that just hit me like a light. The light bulb just went off in my head. And I said, what is Tom Cruise, how is he different than me? And I said, if I cut Tom Cruise on the wrist with a knife, does he bleed? I said, yeah, Tom Cruise is going to bleed. If Tom Cruise goes underwater for an hour, he's going to drown. And I started to realize Tom Cruise was no different than I was. I started to put him on an equal playing field to me and say, but what is he doing different? Why is he all the way up here with his career, with his finances, with his movies? What is he doing differently than me? He's working harder than me. That's the conclusion I came up with. So I got that same answer, but it was a big moment because I was putting people on a pedestal at the time. I was looking at Warren Buffett. I was looking at Bill Gates. I was looking at Tom Cruise, and I was thinking that they were better than me, that they were lucky, that they just got lucky. Maybe I didn't get lucky. And I said, he's just outworking me. The only thing that is different than me and Tom Cruise is he's working harder than me. So I'm going to freaking figure out a way to work as hard as I freaking can to get on Tom Cruise's level. But I still was searching for that answer. And a few weeks later, I moved back in, and I feel like when you're searching, that's when you find the answers. Seek and you shall find. If you're not searching, you're not going to find the answers. So I was searching harder than you could possibly imagine, harder than I ever had before for this answer of why are these people outworking me? And I remember I moved into my dad's. I had about a couple weeks left of remodeling my condo, and I ended up moving into my dad's, who lived right across the street. And somebody that my dad had introduced me to a few months prior to that was a girl by the name of Brescia DiMartini. And Brescia DiMartini became a very close friend of mine. But when we first met, she's a fashion designer here in Houston, Texas. She's an awesome fashion designer. She's one of the most fashionable people I know. And I remember that we met for a lunch because my dad is all about making business connections. Let's figure out a way to make money together. And I'm the business brain behind his operation. So he introduced me to Brescia at a restaurant. And we meet at the restaurant. And I just remember not really being super into the meeting, Brescia's words. And, but we did exchange numbers and social media. And we started following each other. And then just a couple months later, I'm living at my dad's house. And she actually happened to live at my dad's. I didn't know that at the time. And I remember I go out to the pool. It's a sunny day, and I go out to lay at the pool, and she comes out, and we're sitting right next to each other. I said, oh, hey, Brescia, how are you doing? And she says, hey, Kirby, how are you doing? And we started to hang out from that day. We crossed paths, and we started to hang out. And I remember about a week into us hanging out when I really felt incredibly attracted to her. And when things really shifted in the relationship for me was when we were sitting up at my dad's place one day, and I was talking to her, and she started, and her dad, who we're going to get into here in a minute, is an ultra successful, inspirational speaker. He considers himself a human behavioral specialist. He's a multi-millionaire, and he's one of the most inspiring people I know. And she looks at me as having, this rich dad running a law firm. So she told me in that moment, and when the relationship really started to shift for me at least, was that she was a troubled child as well, and that she had a lot of issues with school and with getting kicked out of different schools and things like that. And I just remember when she told me that, like my soul started to lock with hers, and it was just, I started to become incredibly attracted to her. And I remember that moment, and that's when things started to heat up in the relationship a little for us. And about a week later, I asked her to be my girlfriend, like a proper gentleman, her words. And we started to date. And I started to learn about her father's philosophies then. But I hadn't really met him, and she was just kind of telling me her father's philosophies. But then about maybe 3 or 4 months into the relationship, maybe even a little more than that, he ended up coming to town. And like I said, he's an inspirational speaker here. So he ends up coming to town, and he's going to be giving a public speech at this local church here called Unity. Unity, baby, that's what it's all about. And we pick him up because he doesn't drive. He realizes how stressful driving is. So me and Brescia get ready. We pick him up at his hotel he's staying at, and we drive him to the church. And I remember him giving the conversation. And this is definitely one of those top 5 moments of my life as well, where I can even hear a little thunder in the background. It's just one of those thunder moments in my life that's just like super powerful. I can't, this is one of the biggest changing, transformational moments in my life. And I remember he gets up there and he starts talking in front of everybody. And he starts saying, have you ever been labeled OCD? Have you ever been labeled ADD? Have they told you you're dyslexic or whatever it is? And he goes, you know what? That's a bunch of BS. Because they told him when he was a kid that he was dyslexic. They told him that he would never be able to read, write, or learn past a first grade level. And he's sitting up and he says, I want you guys to know that all this is a bunch of BS. These labels are BS. That's what they told me. And I'm a multi-millionaire, traveling the world now, inspiring millions of people, doing what I love on a day-to-day basis. And I have almost never paid attention to a teacher in my life other than a few business classes that I was really into. I was just massively super locked in, super focused when he was talking about this. And he says, drop all these labels. What the society is trying to do is they're trying to put you in a freaking box. Don't let them put you in a box. Each and every person on this planet has magnificence inside of them. Each and every person has a unique gift, and they can do whatever they set their minds to. And I was so knocked down by these teachers, by these psychiatrists, that he was speaking to me. And I started to find that answer that I was looking for. And one of the biggest points that he hit on was the difference between motivation versus inspiration. And what he said, the difference between motivation versus inspiration is this. Imagine a kid that comes home from school and he runs right upstairs to play his video game. Nobody had to tell him to play the video game. He just naturally ran right upstairs and started playing. And the kid is super focused. He's locked in on the video game and he's growing like crazy. He's overcoming challenges. He's moving on to the next level. And then all of a sudden, the kid's mom comes in and says, "Sweetie, it's time to take out the trash and do your homework." And the kid goes, "Mom, just give me 5 more minutes, please." And the kid's mom goes, "Sweetie, you take that trash out and do your homework right now or you're grounded." And the kid says, "Fine." And he runs downstairs, throws the trash out super quick, runs right back in, scribbles his homework down, probably guesses all C on every answer, and he runs right back upstairs to play the video game. And that is the exact difference between motivation versus inspiration. The kid needed motivation. The word motive comes from something external, comes from motive. He needed an external force to get him to take that trash out and do his homework. But the word inspiration comes from within. The kid was naturally inspired to play that video game. Nobody had to tell him to do it. He just did it. And that is the exact difference. And exactly what Dr. DeMartini was saying is, that kid was super focused. He was super locked in playing that video game. He wasn't ADD. He wasn't OCD. He wasn't dyslexic. He was super locked in and growing more than you can put into words when he was playing what he was naturally inspired to do. And that's the key, to find what you're inspired by. And I just remember that really hit me like a rock, that whole conversation. There's this fire's going through my body. I remember like it was yesterday. And I end up going to, after the talk with Dr. DeMartini, we ended up taking him home again. And he said, and he goes, "How'd you like the speech, Kirby?" And I looked back at him because he was sitting in the back seat, and I said, "Dr. DeMartini, that speech lit me on fire more than you can imagine. You know what? They told me that I had learning disabilities too. They told me I couldn't do this too." And all my energy started to pick up, and he looked at me and he saw that I was really getting fired up. And he kind of he's a very, peaceful, very balanced, centered person. He kind of just nodded at me, but he saw that the inspiration was coming. I was getting fired up. And he told me to take the value determination process, and I ended up dropping him off at his hotel. And later that night, I went to my dad's law firm. And now I'm at my dad's law firm, and I just said, "You know what? Brisha's been telling me to do this value process. He just told me to do it. I'm feeling inspired. Something is feeling different inside of me. Now I'm going to take this value determination process." So I ended up taking it. And this is another one of those massive moments in my life, if not the most pivotal moment in my life, to really help me start pursuing my dreams more than ever before. And I ended up taking the value determination process. And what he said also in that speech is that it's all about your values. That kid had a value on video games. Me, I had a value on business. Tennis wasn't a value of mine. What they're trying to teach these kids in school, science, history, and they're not focused, it's because it's not a value. But when you're living according to your highest priority values, that's your telos. The Greek gods used to call it your telos. That's your greatness. And if you really craft your life around what you love to do, that's where you're going to grow the most. And that's where you're going to achieve your dreams and do things that you could possibly never imagine. And I ended up taking the value determination test. And when I took the value test, there's 3 main things that I learned. Your 3 highest values are your most important thing. But my 4th highest value was actually organization. And it just got me thinking, because I said, everything that these people are telling me, my dad, my roommates, they thought that it was something was wrong with me because of how organized. They constantly kept making fun of me because I had to make my bed. I had to have everything super straight. And if you look around where we are here in my home, everything is super organized. So I realized that organization was one of the most important things in this world to me, having a tidy space. And all of a sudden I said, wow, what everybody is telling me is my biggest weakness, and they're calling me OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, that actually might be my biggest strength. And now, since that day, I've actually owned it. And one of my biggest skills in business, my probably my biggest skill in business is how organized I am, how great and efficient I am at developing systems and processes to make sure businesses move forward. And I own it now. So what people tell you is your biggest weakness might actually be your biggest strength, and it actually is one of my biggest strengths, and I own it now, and I'm super proud of it. But the second thing that I learned as well is that health was number one to me. When I took that test, it came out that health was number one. And I realized that when I went and ate a cheeseburger, why I would be so mad at myself. So if I had a goal to eat healthy throughout the week, and then I would eat an unhealthy cheeseburger, I would beat myself up and be so mad at myself inside. And I realized the reason I'm getting mad at myself is because your body is the ultimate feedback mechanism. Your intuition is trying to steer you in the right direction. It's trying to tell me this isn't what you want to do, Kirby. And when you listen to that intuition, that's when you start to evolve and start to get massively inspired. So it was upsetting me that I was breaking my goal of eating healthy. And now, as you know, if it's not organic, I eat, healthier than than most people on the planet, 99.9% of the people on the planet. And then, hitting on the second point still, I used to look at overweight people, and I used to look at them and I would judge them really hard. And I would look at them and I would say, how could you let yourselves get like this? That is disgusting to let yourself get 300 pounds overweight. But in that moment, I dropped the judgment and I said, instead of judging these people, Kirby, let's figure out a way to help them out. And I started KirBeBetter in this moment. And all of the answers that I was looking for throughout this entire episode started to come together. And the answers started to come together. And I said, the reason I'm working out 6 hours a day in the gym. So I said, if I could, in this moment, if I could figure out a way to get my phone out and say, health is wealth, let's move, come on, get up, stop being lazy, let's go. And I could help people lose weight. And my 3 highest values were health, business, and personal development. So health, business, and personal development. If I could figure out a way to hop on my phone and I'm in a gym somewhere, and I'm inspiring people to move more, to take command of their health, and to lose weight, then I'm living in my dreams. And if I could literally get paid to do that, then I'm living in my dreams. And I'm already working out 6 hours a day in the gym. I might as well figure out a way to turn this into a business. And that's exactly what I did in this moment. KirBeBetter is my 3 highest values, which are health, business, and personal development. KirBeBetter is a business about health and personal development. We're trying to help people lose weight, get healthier, mental, physically, and spiritually, and self-improve. And ever since that moment, I found that answer that I was looking for. And the answer is to do what you love and love what you do. And you do that by aligning with your highest values. And I'm super grateful for Dr. DeMartini and his work for showing me how to do this. And ever since that day, I'm the hardest worker in the room. You can't outwork me. I wake up every day before the sun, and I guarantee you, I'm the freaking hardest working dude in that room. And it's because I found my highest values, and it's because I found what I'm most inspired by. And I'm not ADD. I'm not OCD. I'm super focused on making the world a better place, one person at a time. And that's our mission here at KirBeBetter. Jordan, it's been an absolute pleasure. But the one thing I want to say is, and we're going to end this episode. If you guys want to see the 3rd and final episode of my KirBeBetter story, stay tuned for next week. But the one point I want to leave you with is to stop putting people on a pedestal. I want you to realize that everybody on this planet, we are all created equally. You, we are all created equal, and we all have a gift. We all have magnificence inside of us, just like Dr. DeMartini told me that day. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something, because you are perfect as you are and have everything that you need inside of you to achieve all of your dreams. So don't let anybody take that away from you. Jordan, absolute pleasure. 3rd and final episode next week, guys. Stay tuned. You see where that arrow's pointing on his shirt right there? That's where we're going. See you at the top.
I see you at the top. That's where I go.